What up, how's it going, and welcome back for another video. Today's video we're going to be doing a patch 9.24 notes rundown. So normally whenever I do these, they're normally directed towards pro play and stuff like that, but there's no pro play happening right now. And I talk a little bit about solo queue. So we'll be talking mostly about solo queue changes and then what the idea from the developers are coming and what changes could be happening for pro play coming up when around Kespa Cup and then semi-pro play with like TCS, stuff like that. So stuff that might be important and might be relevant to those tournaments. But also just talking about the champion changes in general because we are in the off season. So that out of the way, let's get right into it. So one other thing I want to quickly say, if you're unfamiliar with doing like patch note rundowns, you haven't really watched those too often or gotten into them. And something that I talk about specifically is whenever you're reading patch notes, you want to try to think of what does the developer want? Because a lot of the changes have something to do with what the developer wants. Sometimes they'll tell you specifically in these little texts right here. They'll tell you exactly what they wanted from this change. But if they don't, then you have to kind of think about it a little bit more. Okay, Aphelios. We're not going to talk too much about Aphelios. Honestly, if you want to learn about Aphelios, it takes a video itself. You should just watch the Champion Spotlight. Learn about his guns, like learn about all of his different guns, and then just go into a practice tool and play for like an hour, and then you'll understand the champion much better. He's a weird champ. It just has two abilities. It rotates guns. All the guns mean a different thing. This would be a 15-minute video by itself just to talk about Aphelios. So if you want to know more about Aphelios, just watch the Champion Spotlight and then actually go into the client once he's released on patch and just test all of his stuff in a practice tool game. Honestly, is the best way to learn about Aphelios. All right, cool. All right, we're going to talk about Akali's changes. So Akali's changes were changed to where she no longer has a tiny hitbox behind her, which, as I talk about through, is more of a pro play targeted change to better clear the wave by standing in the melees and throwing the Q forward and hitting the caster minions to one-shot the entire wave. And then also the rank 5 damage was reduced from 33% bonus damage to 25% bonus magic damage. So this change is directly for as soon as you hit level 5 and you can instantly kill the caster minions and halfway kill the melee minions. I would imagine this change is in standard games on Akali. You will no longer be able to do that right at rank 9 or rank 5 on that ability. So I imagine that's what the change is directed towards is normal itemization. It'll be difficult to instantly kill the wave. Once you are rank 5 on Akali, you might have to use all of your Qs to destroy the wave completely. So that might be what the bounce change is aimed for, and that's what I think with that little bit of damage reduction right there. Okay, so Amumu. So Banished Toss is cooldown reduced. This is just pretty nice on Amumu. Makes it to where you don't have to think about putting points into this because now the cooldown for the rank 1 Banished Toss is now the cooldown for rank 3. So there's really no point of putting early points into this ability now because the cooldown is reduced so much. And in late game, it's exactly the same. So it makes it a little bit easier to put points into your damaging abilities. So and that your ganking tool with the Banished Toss cooldown is already reduced pretty significantly, so you can get in and you can actually put points into your damage abilities without feeling bad at all about it. Does this make Mumu meta? No. No. It's going to be very difficult for Mumu to ever be truly in the meta. He's always going to be fine at low EOs and stuff like that. But if he was truly good enough to be played at high EO or in pro play, the champion would be way too broken if he was good enough to be played at those EOs and played at pro play. It's just he falls into the category of being one of those really old champions that it's going to be very difficult for them to ever be balanced into the meta until he's reworked. So it's going to be difficult for him. Does this make him into the meta? No, but for people who already play Mumu, it's going to feel much nicer because you can now build the damage. I might give him a try. Might be fun. Okay, Brom. So Brom is getting a pretty big buff, and it's pretty cool. So let's just read his little thing. Brom is a warden, a tanky champion that excels at protecting their allies. Most wardens are great at dealing with melees, but bad that try to dive their backline, but bad at dealing with ranged opponents because of their limited range mobility. However, Brom is the exception, with the generalization. Oh my gosh. Due to his E, which makes him uniquely good at dealing with ranged threats as well. So we don't want to remove the very thing that makes Brom unique, so we're leaning harder into it while lowering his ability to deal with melee champions relative to other wardens. This should then allow us to also buff him in other ways without having him stay as a default safe pick in pro play. Yeah, so Brom has been... There was a time where when Lucian was super meta, when Brom was super OP in the meta, you could build him all the time. It was when Lucian and Ezreal were super, super prevalent. But now that both of those champions aren't nearly as prevalent, so Brom kind of fell off in pro play. And in solo queue, he was already not doing so well because you have to coordinate really well with your AD carry for you to feel the effectiveness of Brom. I love Brom. And so a lot of these changes are really cool because they're buffing his W on the cooldown, which is really nice. So base health growth is increased quite a bit, and base health regen is increased very nicely. So it just helps him get out of lanes that were otherwise not super great. The W stand behind me, this is what's really important right here, is the cooldown on this ability. So this will feel much nicer to max this earlier into the game. I wouldn't say you probably do this over Q max, but it'll feel much nicer maxing this early in the game because of the reduced cooldown right here, as well as 40 mana at all ranks. Feels so nice. So before, if you put a lot of points in here, you were taking 70 mana. You don't build a lot of mana items on Brom in the first place. He's not an enchanter. So that would feel pretty bad to spam this off cooldown. Now it'll feel much nicer to spam this off cooldown. By the time you have this max, you should have about 20% cooldown reduction, something like that. And so it's likely that your cooldown is going to be like 6 seconds. You'll be able to jump around the fight constantly. Okay, so it's a slight nerf to ally resistances. Just a very slight nerf. Not. It's just the scaling percentage is slightly down. At max rank, but the base values are the same. So this kind of falls in line with their idea of they want Brom to have less ability to deal with melee units that attack your champion. Still be able to deal with them, but less be able to. So that's why it nerfs the base resistances on your ally. But they want them to lean a little bit more into being able to deal with ranged threats. That's why the cooldown is reduced, so you can jump on and put your shield on them a little bit easier to block that type of stuff, right? Self-resistances are buffed, so the base values are the same, but the bonus resistances are buffed pretty significantly because you're gonna, on Brom, his build pass, highly resistant base, so I really love this change. I think it's nice. I think it's awesome. The base value on his ultimate is going to go up at rank 2 and rank 3, pretty significantly at rank 3, but most games you honestly don't even get rank 3 ultimate on Brom. You know, how often do supports get to full build and get to level 16? Not every game, but it does happen, right? The knockup is getting buffed. So before the knockup was 0.25 seconds for those hit in the fissure, and a general knockup for those close to the fissure, so around the sides of it, right? Or at the very tip. But then it's now going to be 1 to 1.5 seconds at all ranks based on distance from Brom. So the first target, for the first target hit in the fissure, every other target or within the close vicinity is knocked up for 0.25 seconds. So the first target that Brom will hit with his ultimate will be knocked up for 1 to 1.5 seconds, which is pretty awesome. And then everybody else will be 0.25. So it's a pretty good buff for his ultimate right there. So I'm really happy with the Brom changes. The champions that he combos with really well aren't super meta, so I think it's a really good time to make some balance changes to Brom. And then if like Lucian becomes super OP and stuff like that, then maybe they can revisit some of this stuff. Anyways, cool. Alrighty, so Diana got reworked. The big thing about Diana rework is her ultimate and her E got switched around, which is the best change ever of all time for Diana. This can make her actually playable in the jungle again, which is amazing, because before, if you jungled on Diana, you're pretty much inting your team. You were just telling them, hey, I'm going to farm until I'm 6, good luck. So she's actually able to jungle now. I think she's still going to be more meta in the mid lane, but she is jungleable again, so that's amazing. Awesome. I love flex picks. Okay, base value. So her mana went up to 372 to 420, and then base mana growth up 5, so this is a little bit nicer for just trading a little bit more in lane, and using your Q to farm and some bad matchups. So this is really good quality of life change right here. All right, passive Moon Silver Blade. So essentially, rather than so she has base attack speed gain now, and then rather than putting it into whenever she casts abilities, she gains that attack speed. Now whenever she casts an ability. Now, whenever she casts an ability, she'll get triple the movement speed, or triple the attack speed. Early game, the base value is exactly the same as if it was the old passive. So it's exactly the same as if it was the old passive. But late game, it's pretty significant. So maybe this is incentivizing you don't have to build any attack speed based builds, because this will be nice on here. Cool. So it used to be every third strike deals a cleave damage. AP ratio is right there, and now it'll be every third strike cleaves nearby enemies. It's the same base value, just less. It's essentially her damage on her passive is exactly the same, except for the AP ratio is slightly lowered, and it doesn't restore mana, which is fine because you have a lot of mana growth built into your base stats and stuff like that. So that doesn't really hurt her that much. And this is just basically balancing. This is basically balancing to where it's not you don't permanently have full mana, and it makes it to where I really like this base value change because it makes it to where matchups where you had to farm with your Q feel a little bit better, right? Cool. All right, talk about her Q Crescent Strike. It's just same thing. It's just reduced in mana, which is again going to help that playstyle that Diana has a lot of matchups where she has to just farm with her Q. So it's a little bit safer for her to get out of lane. Also, something that's going to be important that's going to fall through the rest of this is a lot of damage is being taken out of a lot of her abilities, like out of her passive. Some damage or some mana regen was taken out of there. Damage is going to be taken out of the W, and stuff like that. And damage is going to be taken out of Lunar Rush. It's because there's more damage into her ultimate now, whereas previously her E didn't have any damage on it. So there's damage added into the ultimate. So that's why a lot of damage values are being taken off. All right, so we're talking about her shield, so her W. Cooldown reduction, so they made it to where the cooldown is much higher. This kind of falls in line with her play pattern is a little bit more safe in lane, so this makes a little bit more sense. So she shouldn't be able to trade like crazy often. That's why the cooldown is up a little bit higher, because her ultimate is now a regular ability. So it just makes it where you can't trade really aggressively quite as often, but you can play a little bit more safer with the changes made previously, right? Base shield value is slightly lower, and total shield is also slightly lower, and ability ratio is lower, and a new shield ratio with bonus health, so that's kind of weird because I don't imagine you're going to go for a tank build, but maybe a tank build will pop up because her base values are fine, but that's kind of weird. That's kind of weird adding that on there. But anyways, this is a big nerf to this ability overall, right? The cooldown reduction and stuff like that. The reason why this is here is just so you can't trade as quite effectively. And this is interesting because it kind of makes it weird on what ability you max first, because you want to max Q because it's your highest damaging ability, but then you want to max E because that's how you maneuver around the fight. So this is probably going to be your last max, and so this actually does hurt quite a bit. Be interesting to see what ends up being your second max nowadays. All right, new Lunar Rush. So this is just the old ultimate. The passive still works the same. If they're marked by your Moonlight, then it'll reset just like normal. So that's exactly the same. Just the numbers change a little bit. So it's a regular ability, so it can have 5 points now, right? The cooldown reduction late game is just 1 second less, and earlier in the game it is less than it was before. So you're probably going to be putting points in this and maxing the second. Cool. Mana value is much reduced because it's no longer an ultimate, right? Cool. The damage is reduced quite a bit, and the ability ratio is reduced. The reason why this is reduced again is because her new ultimate, Moonfall, is now going to have damage built on it where it didn't before. Alright, so Moonfall. So cooldown's completely different because now it's an ultimate ability. It's essentially does the same thing that the old ability used to do, where it pulls them in. It's just now it slows them a little bit more, and it deals damage. Cool. So the slow is increased quite a bit. Mana is increased because it is an ultimate ability. 100 mana is pretty standard from most ultimates. Alright, new Moon Landing. Diana pulls in one or more enemy champions. The Moonlight crashes down onto her after 1 second, dealing 200, 300, 400, and puts a 0.6 ability power, magic damage, in an area around her. It's a pretty good scaling. Increased by her 35, 65, 85 for plus 1 point round. Oh, additionally, plus this value for each target beyond the first pooled. Wait, let me read that again. If Diana pulls in one or more enemy champions, the Moonlight crashes down onto her after 1 second, dealing blank damage in an area around her. Increased by, oh yeah, so it's increased by how many targets are in there. So if you get a Bobby Big play where you jump into the middle of everybody and you pull 4, the damage will be increased, and the slow and the pull and the knock up will apply on all those enemies. So a lot of her damage is put into her ultimate now and taken a little bit out of her base abilities. I think that's why they buffed her ability to spam her mana a little bit in lane, because she's going to be a little bit weaker without her ultimate nowadays, at least in a 1v1. So she can't trade quite as aggressively earlier in the game because her base values on her abilities are much lower and the ratios are a little bit lower. But they added her mana and made it to where she can farm a little bit better in her bad matchups to Q. But her matchups where she was already fine, she probably feel a little bit better because she'll have her ultimate earlier in the game, so you can trade a little bit safer. You can, Q E in and then E out without them getting their combo onto you. So some of that stuff will feel a little bit nicer. Her trade pattern might feel a little bit more like a Kali earlier in the game. Cool. All right, let's talk about Garen. So these changes to Garen is to disincentivize completely the attack speed build. The attack speed build will still be fine. They're just taking some stuff out of it to where it's, if you're already building the tank items, that'll feel a little bit nicer, and the attack speed items won't feel quite as nice because Garen is kind of benefiting a lot from the new Conqueror changes and the attack speed changes. But they just want it to be an option to build like Phantom Dancer, stuff like that on Garen. So plus 1 spin per 20% attack speed. Now it's plus 1 spin per 25% attack speed. And then spin damage is lowered a little bit based on the levels you put into it, and the attack ratio is the same. So just the base value on leveling this ability is a little bit less, which is just further disincentivizing the damage build. But damage Garen's still going to be fun. Alright, E-base shield increased. We're buffing Karma in a way that makes her more supportive. I love this change. I love Karma. She's one of my favorite champions. So her shield is just a little bit higher as an enchanter rather than a mid laner. They've been making tons of balance changes around Karma to make her a more supported champion for a while, and this is just furthering that. So this change is pretty nice. Alright, Kassadin, who has been a terror in solo queue lately. So Q cooldown now scales, W mana restored decrease later. So this is a nerf overall to Kassadin. So previously he had a 9 second at all ranks, but now it's going to be 9 seconds at max rank. I don't think this changes a whole lot because earlier in the game you can't even spam this off cooldown. You want to spam it with your mana flow cooldown if you're running mana flow, stuff like that. It actually is kind of difficult to spam off cooldown. I don't think this changes too much because most of the time you max this ability anyways. Mana restore is slightly reduced later. This might be a little bit more valuable of a change, but it doesn't change like the Kassadin getting out of the early game just doesn't feel as bad, and I'm not completely certain why, but it doesn't feel as bad Kassadin getting out of lane. I don't think this change does a whole lot because by the time you get to like level 8 or whatever, you're gonna have it in 9.5 seconds. So I don't think this change does a whole lot for Kassadin. I don't really want him to get nerfed. He seems pretty good in solo queue right now, but I love it when Kassadin is playable in pro play. So I really don't want him nerfed out of the meta, but it is preseason right now, so there's no pro play going on, so I do understand these changes. I don't think this actually really does anything. It's just a slight nerf, but it might just incentivize people to not play the champion anymore, so that might be nice. Cool. Alright, Rammus is getting a nice little buff, so his health growth is increased, which is great, so he's a little bit more tankier. And then they reduce the cooldown on his E, which is what you typically max second. So by the time you get to the mid game, it'll be reduced cooldown by, it'll be at that 11 second mark, and then when you get to the late game, it'll be at 10 second. That's going to feel so nice. I love this change. I love Rammus. Rammus is another one of those champions that'll never be pro play meta, and if he is, that's a sad day. Okay, Rises, Q overload damage is getting nerfed a little bit, so that's whenever, so it's getting nerfed a little bit with this wave clear because it's a little too strong in the early game. So the big values that are getting nerfed is at the first 3 levels. That's going to feel not quite as good. And then later, just 15 down doesn't feel quite as bad in the late game. But early in the game, 15 damage reduction feels pretty bad. So this is a pretty nice nerf because Rise has actually been decent in solo queue, which if Rise is decent in solo queue, he's crazy in pro play. And that Worlds, he was probably the best champion. So cool. Senna. So Senna's getting a bunch of changes to disincentivize her being played as an AD carry. Because at AD carry, her win rate has been pretty insane in solo queue, which is pretty interesting. But it's just further balance changes to diminish if you're building her AD or if you're playing AD carry it is disincentivizing that build a little bit, and then more incentivizing her, enchanter like playstyle. So if you're already building her like an enchanter, building those AP items, these changes are actually a buff. So if you're already building her with the themes and stuff like that, which most pro players were already, this is actually a buff to the champion. So it's pretty strange. But it does nerf her ability to be playing at AD, so she's not able to actually flex both roles quite as reliably. So let's look at this stuff. So base health growth is reduced. Before, whenever she killed minions, she only had a 5.55% chance on minions that Senna kills. This is disincentivizing her playing AD. Now it's only 1.67%. So it's very unlikely you get souls dropped from your passive. So that feels pretty bad. This was removed, so champion clones will drop miss rates now. And this was a weird thing. Allied Bard can no longer kill miss rates with this Q. I guess he was able to kill your miss rates. That's pretty interesting. Okay, Q. So the base value is nerfed just barely, just 10, but the damage ratio is nerfed 0.1. So that is, it's just a small nerf. Okay, cool. The root duration is slightly nerfed early. I don't think this is going to matter very much. Late game, it's still the same. 0.2 isn't a big change in terms of root durations, but I guess it's a little bit nice because champion's pretty overpowered. And damage ratio on our ultimate is plus ability power as well. So they nerfed some of the AD stuff. They nerfed your ability to stack up souls, and they buffed the ability power on all the abilities that can run ability power. So that's what I'm saying. The enchanter style is going to feel much nicer on Senna, so that is getting buffed. Her base health value does go down a little bit, but if you're already building enchanter like items, this change is going to feel nice. But if you're actually playing Senna AD carry, then this is a big nerf to Senna AD carry, and that's the idea with this. Cool, Sivir's getting 2 attack damage. She's been feeling kind of bad lately. She's getting some attack damage. Just a nice little buff. Okay, Yuumi is also getting changed to play a more enchanter style as well. So they're making a lot of these enchanter changes. Like Karma getting buffed, Senna getting changed to more of an enchanter style. And this is furthering that style as well. There's a lot to go through, so let's just get into it. Okay, passive bop and block. So back to the OG, it says. Now restores 50 to 160 mana whenever she does. This is the passive, will auto attack gain the shield, and the base shield value is much higher again. I feel like the devs have been waiting a long time to make balance changes on Yuumi because she was so annoying in pro play, and now that there's no pro play, they can try to actually balance her a little bit better without so much backlash, right? Cool. So her mana values have gone up on most of her abilities, actually. So the mana cost is a little bit higher on this ability. The AP ratio is down, so this disincentivizes playing Yuumi carry comps where you run like Garen, stuff like that. So a little bit disincentivizes that as well. Empowered damage is buffed at later levels, but the AP ratio is down. So the base value is higher on later levels, but the AP ratio is down, further disincentivizing Yuumi carry comps. Missile duration, only 2 seconds rather than 3 seconds. Wow, so it's much shorter. Another, further disincentivizing Yuumi carry comps. Okay, Yuumi now has a channel time of 0.25 seconds when attaching from an unattached state. So this is when Yuumi is just sitting by herself, not attached to anybody. So there's actually a tiny channel time. That channel time is not very significant, but it is kind of weird, right? But if she's just going from champ to champ, she can still dash around like Rakan. Cool. Yuumi no longer teleports when her anchor is attached. That is removed. She can now teleport again. Okay, cool. And that was a pro play change as well, teleporting Yuumi with like Garen and stuff like that. So further disincentivizing the tank Yuumi carry comps. Okay, new surprise electric rat race. Mobilizing Yuumi places this ability on a 5-second cooldown. Oh wow, so if she jumps out to block a skill shot, like let's say she jumps out to block a Nautilus hook, you can actually kill her in that duration. That's pretty nice. I like that. I like that a lot. Alright. So it makes it where you can't body block. That was a little bit more of a higher ELO type of thing. But it felt so bad because you would have to think about, do I waste my cooldowns on Yuumi because she's just going to jump back in? Now it'll actually give her a 5-second cooldown. So that's pretty nice for that type of play. Yuumi increases her allies' adaptive force by... The base values have gone up. and the percentages have gone up. So the you and me passive is just a little bit stronger. So that's pretty nice. Since I took a lot of the damage out of her other abilities, this further incentivizes playing more like an enchanter. Okay, new attack zooms. So when you zoom people, they now gain attack speed. Further enchanter, right? No longer stocks up charges, so you can no longer get 2 charges of this. No longer increases Yumi's healing based on the target's missing health. The heal base value is much higher, but it no longer scales with missing health, right? And the ability power scaling is a little bit more, further incentivizing the enchanter style build. Cool. The cooldown is reduced, but the mana is increased. But the mana is increased pretty significantly. And remember, they added the mana regen and our passive back to kind of play with this, but these mana values are really high. So it's going to be interesting if you max this first, because if you max this first, the mana cost is so high, and it'll be really interesting what you do with your build. Since you don't have to build support items anymore, it might just be you build a tier on this champion. And that might be okay. It's really interesting where that's going to go. Because with the support item changes, you don't have to build the support item anymore. You just buy the first part, and then it upgrades on its own. So maybe you just buy a tier now. I don't know. Because the mana values are so high. All right, movement speed, and it's a little bit less safe for you to trade now, because if you get CC'd by Nautilus Hook or something like that, you can't just jump back into your ally. All right, movement speed, 50%, no longer decays over time, and the duration is 3 seconds long. So I kind of like that. Feels a little bit more consistent. You kind of know what you're going to get. The attack speed stuff is pretty interesting. Yumi's just an enchanter now. I think these changes make her better. I like these changes, actually. It makes her lower level of play feel better, and higher level of play maybe feel worse. Cool. So this is just a bunch of Lex's abilities are going to look a little bit different. It just kind of changed a little bit. Okay, Conquer is going to be nerfed on ranged champions, so duration 8 to 6 seconds. Ranged champions, healing will be 15% to 8%. I think this will still be fine on a lot of ranged champions, just the ones that felt really broken won't feel nearly as broken, like Cassiopeia, stuff like that. But I think it's still playable. Probably just need to be tested a little bit more to see how good it is. But champions who previously wanted to go press the attack probably will go press the attack again. Because this is kind of novelty anyway. So champions that want to go press the attack will probably go press the attack. Champions like Draven will probably still be able to go Conquer because he's in your face, stuff like that. Maybe champions like Ashe might still feel nice on it. Cassiopeia probably still feels very nice on this. Ryze, I would imagine, probably feels nice on this, but he wanted Phase Rush anyways. So Omnistone is just getting buffed to where it's more likely to give you keystones that make sense at the time. So for example, more likely to get Predator when not near enemy champions. So you get boosted movement speed. More likely to get Dark Harvest when low health enemies are nearby. So it's just more likely to give you the keystones that make sense. I don't know what this change makes because it doesn't have any number values right here, right? So it's just more likely to give it to where you make sense. So I don't know what this balance change is going to change to this keystone. Honestly, it's just not very good. Let's see what it does. It needs a lot of testing to see what happens with it. And so these were mid-patch on 9.23 changes since it was a super long patch. I'm going to very quickly go through them just in case you missed them, but Ezreal got buffed. So didn't make him meta though. Cool. Omnistone got buffed. Still wasn't good. That's why it's getting buffed again. Death's Dance, I didn't know this, bug fix, will no longer infinitely proc Infernal Soul Explosion. So if you had Death's Dance and they had Infernal Soul, you would just be exploding the whole time your bleed is going. Now that's hilarious. A lot of people didn't know this. This was nerfed pretty significantly, especially early into the game. And the gold cost was increased a lot. A lot of people have been shit-talking me for not knowing Sanguine Blade exists, because when I make champion build guides and stuff like that, I don't include this item a whole lot. I'm like, bro, it's so expensive and it's not even that good anymore. It's still good. It's still good, but it's so expensive. In champions, it doesn't make sense to build on. You don't just int build this item. Whereas before, you would just int build this item because it was so broken. But it's not nearly as broken anymore, and it's more expensive. So champions, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to build it on. It's not that good to build on anymore. Anyways, Ocean Drake, one of the only useful drakes, is getting nerfed. And this is nerfed. Yay, all the drakes are useless. Everybody's still going to int for drakes in the early game, though. Yay. It's one of the most annoying things, too. Everybody inting for drakes early in the game. Okay, Elder Drake. Utter emulation now properly calculates, so it's just a bug change. Cool. Rift Herald is stronger. I remember seeing this. So it's stronger earlier in the game. Rift Herald is very good to take, friends. Cool. Turret plates are reduced a little bit, and the resistances per missing plate go up as well, so it makes a turret a little bit more squishy. Elemental rift changes, so this is just like what you actually see when the rift changes. It's not as dramatic as it was before because I was pissing everybody off. This is all RM stuff, and then here's some skins. Skins are cool. Dawnbringer Karma, let's go. Anyways, guys, this video has been pretty long, so we're about to wrap this one up. The TLDR, a lot of enchanter changes to make enchanters better. Nice little Rammus buffs. Kassadin nerf probably means nothing. Garen attack speed nerf. Diana rework is amazing. I'm so excited for it. Brom buff was awesome. I loved it. Amumu, just kind of quality of life change. Akali quality of negative quality of life change. And Aphelios is released. So this is a pretty cool patch. It's a 3-week patch, so expected it to be kind of large, not nearly as big as 9.23, obviously. But changes were pretty significant and really interesting to see what happens with this. A lot of enchanter stuff. It's going to be interesting. I know nobody likes enchanter gameplay, but it's going to be interesting. Anyways, guys, that's going to be it for the video. Thank you so much for watching, and we're going to be doing a Teamfight Tactics patch rundown, but you guys probably don't play that game. So anyways, bye-bye. Bye!